welcome to this explainer. Today we're embarking on a pretty fascinating journey into the hidden mechanics of the human mind. We're going to pull back the curtain on why we behave the way we do, really examining the invisible walls we build up during the day, and then the fascinating and sometimes, well, terrifying ways our own neurology can trap us in the dark of night. Okay, let's dive into this. We're looking at a real dual phenomenon today. On one hand, we have the waking mind, how it isolates itself, how it intensely guards its digital footprint, and how it strictly curates reality just to protect its peace. But on the flip side, we have the nocturnal mind. This is the exact same hypervigilant brain attempting to rest, but instead it ends up becoming paralyzed between the dream world and waking life. It's this gripping dichotomy of absolute control and then a total loss of control. Chapter 1. The Waking Mind. Social Patterns. It's honestly fascinating to realize why so many people struggle to make connections. And it rarely has to do with confidence. It usually boils down to these subtle, subconscious patterns. Avoiding vulnerability keeps our conversations strictly surface level. Then we go and overanalyze those brief interactions, which just fuels anxiety. That leads to a passive waiting game, where connections just sort of fade away. Driven by a fear of rejection, we play it safe. And ultimately, this constant mental gymnastics drains our social energy completely. These patterns, they're the quiet architects of human isolation. So, how does a highly guarded mind protect itself? Well, you might think over-explaining is the polite way to maintain the peace, right? But psychological research points to something completely different. There's a stark contrast here. Trying to justify your limits actually weakens your boundaries because it gives other people room to negotiate. But offering a precise boundary, like simply saying, "I'm not available," now that reinforces your space with absolute clarity and literally zero guilt. This brings us to a really powerful perspective. You don't always need to remove someone from your life. Sometimes you just need to reduce how much access they have to you. Protecting your emotional balance doesn't always have to mean a dramatic fallout. It's often just about managing access, less time, less emotional availability. You're creating a safe distance without actually destroying the connection. Chapter 2. Private Digital Life. Online Boundaries. Have you ever wondered why some people leave literally zero digital footprint? No daily updates, no photos, nothing. Well, it largely comes down to where they source their validation. The traditional social media model totally thrives on external validation. Likes, comments, all that public feedback. But highly private individuals operate differently. They just don't rely on that external applause. Their self-worth is rooted entirely in internal standards, which completely removes the psychological itch to post something just for a reaction. And this leads to a brilliant psychological concept. Meaningful moments feel more authentic when they are lived, not broadcast. By drawing a hard line between real life and their digital presence, these folks drastically reduce their daily stress. They're actively protecting their personal identity. For them, not everything needs to be turned into content. The experience itself is the entire reward. And this brilliantly illustrates why broadcasting can actually ruin an experience. Think about how your attention splits when you're focused on posting. Half of your cognitive load is trying to actually experience the moment, while the other half is obsessively managing the audience. You're worrying about angles, captions, and the anticipated reactions. Choosing privacy means keeping 100% of your attention firmly anchored in reality. So we've painted a very clear picture of a mind that is guarded, hyper-aware, highly structured, and deeply protective of its boundaries. But what happens when this very same vigilant brain attempts to power down and go to sleep? Seriously, what happens when the walls finally come down? Chapter 3. The Nocturnal Trap. Sleep Paralysis. To demystify this terror, we first have to understand the biological mechanism meant to keep us safe. It's called rapatonia. This is the natural phase of deep sleep where your brain essentially flips a chemical switch to temporarily disable most of your muscle movement. Why? Well, so you don't physically jump out of bed and act out your dreams. It is a vital biological safety mechanism, but sometimes the timing goes horribly wrong. Let's move to and see how this builds. When that timing goes wrong, we enter what I call the sequence of terror. Step 1. Your consciousness suddenly returns, making your mind fully alert. But step 2, your body doesn't get the memo. It remains chemically trapped in REM-tonia. You can't move, you can't speak, and then comes the terrifying climax. Because part of your brain is still technically dreaming, that active dream imagery spills directly into your waking reality. Because your conscious brain is awake, it is processing these inputs as absolute reality. It's not interpreting them as a dream, it's interpreting them as an immediate physical threat in your bedroom. This is exactly why people experiencing sleep paralysis report seeing dark figures standing over them, hearing sinister whispers, or feeling the heavy weight of footsteps on the floor. It's simply the dreaming system malfunctioning, overlaying its terrifying data directly onto your conscious, visual, and auditory fields. So why does this happen to some people and not others? Well, when we look at the primary triggers, we see a clear pattern. Stress and emotional exhaustion create an overstimulated mind that radically disrupts normal sleep cycles. Inconsistent sleep schedules confuse the brain's transitions. And crucially, hypervigilance plays a major role. That highly guarded, hyper-aware waking mind we discussed earlier, it's naturally far more prone to waking up abruptly during REM sleep, triggering consciousness before the body can actually move.
Chapter 4. Waking Up. Self-Transformation.
The true engine of all human change is found right here, neuroplasticity. It's an incredibly optimistic truth. This is the brain's biological ability to physically rewire itself. It strengthens neurological pathways through small, consistent, repeated actions. Big transformations, they don't happen overnight. They happen when you force the brain to turn difficult, uncomfortable behaviors into smooth, automatic habits over time. But there's an absolutely crucial role for this to work. Transformation requires a shift in identity, not just motivation. Consider the action-driven approach of saying, I will try to stop procrastinating. That relies purely on fleeting willpower. Compare that to the identity-driven approach. I am someone who takes action. We naturally act in ways that align with who we fundamentally believe we are. To change the behavior, you first have to rebrand the identity. To summarize the true mechanics of self-transformation, we've got to accept a few realities. First, awareness must precede change. You literally cannot change a trigger you don't notice. Second, your environment shapes your behavior far more than your willpower ever could. Motivation is temporary, sure, but a well-designed environment is permanent. Third, expect resistance. The brain naturally resists change because familiarity feels biologically safe. And fourth, discomfort is not a sign of failure. Discomfort is a mandatory symptom of growth. We've traversed the architecture of social boundaries, the quiet power of digital privacy, the neurological terrors of the night, and the real mechanics of rewiring your own brain. The systems are clear. The science is totally laid bare. So, I'll leave you with this final thought for today's explainer. Once you finally understand how your mind truly works, what person will you choose to become?